Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today, we're going to talk about what the Navy pays for on museum ships. Today's video is being filmed in the ship's butcher shop, which is one of 100 unique locations on the ship I would love to see restored and open so that the public can check it out. Obviously, having a butcher shop on board was very important for a city at sea during World War II. But less so in the modern Navy with our modern supply structure. So this is not the sort of thing that you would see on a contemporary warship. So, does the Navy give us money to clean up spaces like this, or to operate at all? Are we still owned by the Navy? I get questions like this all of the time, and not just about our ship, about museum ships in general. The short answer is the Navy doesn't give us anything. The Navy gives us a ship that we deem as historically significant, the museum, and the Navy considers that final disposal of the vessel, just as surely as scrapping it or selling it to a foreign country for them to use in their Navy. At that point, the Navy is basically done with us. We cannot get money from them. We can work with them to get parts off of other active ships, and they do inspect us. They did at one time inspect us to make sure things were okay. If things are found to be not okay, they don't intervene though. Why doesn't the Navy pay for these ships? Man, look at a modern Navy ship. It's covered in rust. It looks worse than any museum ship out there. The Navy can't afford to take care of the fleet it has, and quite honestly, the fleet that they have is pretty ineffective. The littoral combat ships don't work. The Zumwalts don't have guns and break down all the time. Like, the Navy cannot build a functioning ship. They spend billions of dollars on a new aircraft carrier, and then the elevators don't work on it after years and years of development. If they can't keep their own ships looking shipshape and functional, they certainly can't spend taxpayer money on museum ships. Are there any museum ships that are run by the Navy? Yes, there are. The frigate Constitution is run by the Navy. She is still an active commissioned vessel. She has a crew on board. The restoration and preservation staff that work on her and do maintenance are contractors for the Navy. The museum associated with them is a separate foundation. That is, unless I'm mistaken, that is a little bit separate. It's not actual Navy. They also run the Submarine Nautilus, which is the only nuclear-powered museum ship that's currently operating. They formerly ran the destroyer Barry at the Washington Naval Yard, but have since disposed of that vessel. They have some smaller vessels that fall under the Naval History and Heritage Command purview, like midget submarines and smaller exploration submarines, things like that, that are operated at Navy museums or in Navy storage facilities. But the Navy is in the active warfighting business. They are not in the museum ship business. So, with the exception of Constitution, there is no museum ship that is an active commissioned ship. And with a very small number of exceptions, there aren't any that are run by the Navy. All of these ships are run by private nonprofits, which is interesting because when these ships were at the end of their service lives, the Navy couldn't afford to keep them going. I bet they would have kept the Iowa-class battleships in service if the money had been there to do that. But it wasn't there. They weren't able to redeck the ships. They weren't able to keep the guns going. They weren't able to pay the 2.5 million gallons of fuel per month that these ships needed. So they did the economically frugal thing, and they disposed of these vessels. They're old. They need too much maintenance. Let's get rid of them and save the ones that we can afford. The nonprofits that operate all of these ships today do not have the infinite resources of the federal government, and yet we're still trying to do what the Navy said they couldn't. So that brings up the question of, hey, everybody agrees that these ships are nationally significant, historically significant. Why do we need money? Why can't we just do it with volunteers? Well, we are not just a museum ship, we're also a museum. And to be a successful museum, you need museum professionals working there. Volunteers are a huge part of our organization, and they do a lot of really valuable work for us. However, volunteers work for free. You don't control them. So volunteers come in and they work with staff on maintenance projects. They can't necessarily come in and figure out what needs to be done and know how to do it the way that the museum does it on their own. And we used to have volunteers who gave guided tours of the ship. Well, the volunteers couldn't necessarily come in on days when we had large tour groups. And so that meant that some people were booking tours to the ship and we didn't have people to give those tours. Paying tour guides to do that as opposed to relying on volunteers gives us more control over that. Another thing is that there are certainly much smaller museum ships out there that run mostly volunteer, and there are a couple of very successful examples of that. Sometimes these museum ships need work right away. We have welding issues that come up all the time, like things that we need welded, holes we need patched, letting water into the ship causing more deterioration. I would love to have volunteer welders come out and patch that, but those guys are good at a job. They've got a day job to pay for their families. They can't come in here every time I find a hole, so we have to pay a welder to come in and do our maintenance work. So when it comes to individual spaces like this one, oftentimes volunteers will take them on as a task and start cleaning them and getting them ready. If we had the money to put a maintenance guy or two in here, it would be done real quick. We put a volunteer in a space and we're on his schedule. He comes out 2 or 3 Saturdays a month and works the project along. He comes out for 2 or 3 hours at a time. So months go by and the project is underway, but it's not happening quickly. And then circumstances change. That volunteer moves or can no longer come out for medical reasons, or something else comes up. And so then we're back to square one. We have to get somebody new in here to figure out where the project is and go to the next step. Volunteers are great, but with a ship like ours, they can't do it all. So that brings up the inevitable question of it costs $2, $3, $4 million to run a battleship in any given year. Pay for the lights, pay for the sewage. How do we do it? Battleship New Jersey is very fortunate in that the state of New Jersey, through a number of different agencies, supports us for a good percentage of our operating expense. Other museum ships are not so fortunate. The state of Massachusetts does not support Battleship Cove in any meaningful way. The different states are more or less helpful with their individual ships. And that's reasonable. These states are in charge of making sure the traffic lights work, making sure that the fire departments have the engines they need, and making sure that the schools have textbooks. So museum ships are not the highest priority. In some instances, you get a museum ship like New Jersey in the state of New Jersey, where the whole state is proud of this vessel being named after them. Other times, like ships other than the battleships in their home state, is Baltimore proud that they have a ship there that's named after Baltimore resident Roger B. Tawney? Are they proud that they have the Norfolk-built ship Constellation there? Is South Carolina proud that they have USS Yorktown? Yorktown is a highly decorated ship, but is there the same association with the state as Battleship New Jersey in the state of New Jersey? So sometimes the simple act of having your ship's name in your home state means funding in more ways than historical significance does. So, funding. How are we able to stay open? How do we keep the lights on? Ticket sales. When you come out and visit the ship, when you do an event on the ship, when you take a tour of the ship, your ticket sales go right back into operating the ship. All of these museum ships are nonprofits. So your ticket sales give us the money to keep going. Donations. Just like ticket sales, any donations you make towards the museum, which are tax deductible because we're all nonprofits, that goes into preserving the ship. Grant funding. Cultural institutions like ours are able to apply for and potentially get grants. We have a guy on staff whose entire job is development and membership to cultivate grants and other partnerships to get money in so that we can continue to operate. With the exception of grant funding, there is no money from the federal government that supports ships like these. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you are interested in either volunteering or donating, there are links in the description for each. Those services are hugely helpful to a museum like us. Can't do everything, but it does a heck of a lot, and we really appreciate the help. If you guys have any questions about how we get our money or other more museum-y related topics, let us know in the comment section down below. This video is the result of a number of questions we've received. So it helps us figure out what our new content's going to be if you ask us what it is that confuses you about how museum ships operate. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State and also from donations. Remember to like, share, and subscribe so that you're notified when we put out new content. And thanks for watching.